Hey, just a note here, stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to show you what category of properties have almost or actually 90K worth of equity built into it if you want to jump on board. Welcome to Housing Bubble 2.0 News of the Week, or as I like to call it, another episode of As the Housing Market Turns. Randy Patrick here, putting the realism back in real estate because, quite frankly, we need it these days. We're going to talk about a number of things, but we're going to focus really about a recent report that came out from the CFPB regarding a number of renters and homeowners that are exposed with what's going on in our marketplace right now. But first of all, if you're not already a subscriber, if you could help my channel grow and smash that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate that. So thank you very much. And one more thing too, you know what? I talk a lot about distressed properties on this channel. And if you want to see what's going on in your local area, your neck of the woods, go to gethousingdata.com. I've got a deal set up with foreclosure.com. They are the leading provider of distressed property listings and inventory in the U.S. Go check them out at gethousingdata.com, and I can tell you what they actually provide is a 7-day free trial so you can see what's going on. The data is very good, it's very accurate, and it's under $40 a month. So, you know, that's not a small price to pay to find out what's happening behind the scenes because no one's going to really tell you about it from a retail perspective. So again, gethousingdata.com and check it out. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So a new report from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, that's called the CFPB, finds over 11 million families at risk of losing their housing. So when you take a look at this, you're like, okay, here we go. What's that all about? Well, I think really it's just time. The CFPB probably figured out it's time that we chime in because they've really said nothing over the past, since really, if you take a look at it, since April 2020 to where we are today, March the 4th, this is today's date when I'm doing this video, and they really haven't said much about what's going on in the industry. And the CFPB kind of, was responsible for the Dodd-Frank Act and things like that. So it really is, they're the watchdog to make sure that things in various industries, especially the housing and mortgage industry, is moving smoothly and that consumers are protected and aren't getting, I guess, bamboozled by the big banks and stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff was created, especially Dodd-Frank was created as a result of the previous mortgage meltdown and housing crisis. That's why some of this stuff is in place here. But basically, ultimately it boils down to that they're saying that over 11 million families are behind on their rent or mortgage payments. 2.1 million families are behind at least 3 months on mortgage payments, while 8.8 million are behind on rent. Homeowners alone are estimated to owe almost $90 billion in missed payments. That's a lot of money. We have very little time to prevent millions of families from losing their homes to eviction and foreclosure, said the acting director. At the CFPB, we are working hard to help homeowners and renters as the U.S. begins to turn a painful crisis caused by the pandemic into a robust recovery. We know small landlords are struggling too, with many dipping into savings or using credit cards to make it through the pandemic. We want everyone, homeowners, renters, landlords, and mortgage servicers, to have the tools they need to know to avoid unnecessary evictions and foreclosures. Well, that's very nice of them, isn't it? So at least they're acknowledging the problem. So, you know me, I like to run up the flagpole when we have acknowledgement. So this is a group that I think has come late to the party to comment on this, but better late than never. And they're saying, hey, we're going to have problems in the future. Their numbers are being provided. They're quoting Black Knight Financial. So that's why I think some of the numbers they're talking about here may not be maybe Q3 numbers for 2020 and may not be as recent. It just sort of depends on where they're, when they're pulling their stats here. But ultimately, in the end, they're saying, while mortgage forbearance, the option to pause or reduce payments temporarily, has dropped foreclosures to historic lows, 2.1 million homeowners are more than 90 days behind on payments and are likely to experience severe financial hardship when payments resume. Of these families, an estimated 263,000 families are seriously behind on their mortgages and not in forbearance, putting them at a higher risk of foreclosure once federal and state moratorias are ended. So there you go. So ultimately, they're just sort of saying, hey, we think there's problems here and we're the industry watchdog, and everyone be aware of everything. So okay, that's great. Now, just to I guess you could say, I'm not adding fuel to the fire. I'm just sort of putting the secondary perspective on here. So American Enterprise Institute, basically came out with their numbers, which they get from Fannie and Freddie or FHA, with respect to the FHA delinquency. So we can see that in January, the FHA delinquency level was 17% of all FHA-based loans, and the seriously delinquent level was 11.8%. So seriously delinquent being 90 days or greater. So we can see that the overall number of delinquent went down, but the seriously delinquent remained the same. It's been pretty much static for the past, November, December, and January. We've seen a very slight decrease from November to December, and December to January. Again, we're talking tenths of a percentage point of delinquencies that are decreasing. So the delinquent is 30 days plus, and the seriously delinquent is 90 days plus. So there you go. So why would some numbers change? Well, the seriously delinquent would basically either remain the same or change, because people who are delinquent, once they pass that second to third month, now they're moving into once 90 days is up, they're into the seriously delinquent area. So that's how that number takes care, I guess you could say remains where it's at. A delinquent could be you've paid, you've got some money, you sold, whatever, and part of it moving from delinquent to serious delinquent. So there's a little bit of shifting going on, but it's not really too dramatic at this point. But we start looking at these numbers here, you're going to see what makes sense. And I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet here, and we'll get back to the CFPB in a second here. So this is they produce this every month, and if you want this information, just email me and I'll email it to you. 10 most threatened metros based on FHA delinquency rates through January 31st, 2021. So we have about 7.8 million FHA loans out there. Delinquent loans are 1.329. Percent of total delinquent loans are 17%, serious delinquent, 11.8% across the board. If we take a look at the 10 most threatened metros based on the FHA delinquencies, we've got Atlanta area as being the number one with an active portfolio of 247,000 loans. I think that what they do is they're ranking the number of total delinquent loans as how they're ranking the 10 most threatened. Okay. So you've got 49,000, almost 50,000 delinquent loans. Only FHA. This is not GSE or portfolio loans or non-banks, whatever. This is just FHA-based loans, by the way. So we can see that the total delinquent is 20% for Atlanta, and it's 14% plus for Atlanta for serious delinquent. Now, Chicago has actually jumped up into the second place. The previous month, that was Houston. So Chicago's jumped up now to second place. Obviously, 21.8%. Houston dropped to third place with 21.4%. Dallas, I think, has jumped up as well, too. It may have swapped with Washington. So Dallas at 18.2%. Washington area, the D.C. metro area, 20%. Riverside, San Bernardino, 16.9%. Baltimore area of Maryland, 19.6%. San Antonio, 18.8%. Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford, 18.4%. And where I'm from, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, at 16.2%. So again, this is just FHA delinquencies, and you can see how it plays out for this month. If we go to the next slide, there's just been some subtle changes. You can see that Houston was second as opposed to Chicago. Dallas was below Washington. Everything else kind of remained the same. So you had two major metro sort of swap locations. Who knows the reason why? But that's the case. And again, it depends on where all the FHA concentration is. So there you go. So those are what's the most threatening areas. So I'm going to use this kind of a little bit as a litmus test to say, okay, this is what's coming down the path here, and this is going to stoke the delinquencies and the foreclosures and forbearance as time goes on. So please keep that in mind. So getting back into the CFPB report, really it boils down to this. The number of homeowners behind their mortgage has doubled since the beginning of the pandemic. 6% of mortgages were delinquent as of December 2020, up from 3% in March 2020. So really, the pandemic has doubled our delinquencies where we are now. Most of the delinquent loans, 2.1 million borrowers, were more than 3 months behind on payment, signaling severe economic distress. So you can see the chart there that obviously the 30 to 60 days are dropping. This is the light green for 2019 December, the darker green 2020 December. So you can see that there's been the 30 days dropped from year over year, but the 90 days skyrocketed from year over year. And active foreclosures dropped a little bit. Reason being, well, not much is happening with foreclosures because they're not foreclosing on a number of loans, and they're not actually filing new foreclosures as well too. And this moratorium really is affecting government-backed loans, but I can tell you that some of the lenders' policies, they're not actually pushing stuff because they can file it, but if the court systems aren't working properly or they're not as effective as they were prior to the pandemic, and they're probably thinking, why do I need to file the foreclosure stuff? I'll just write it out until everything kind of opens up, then we'll start to file again as well too. So that's sort of what's happening. So what we don't see is the big wave that's going to come at some time in the future. Now, the bottom paragraph is interesting. It says the data suggests renters are struggling even more than homeowners. As of December 2020, an estimated 8.8 million renter households were behind on their rental payments. Low-income renters were more likely to report they were behind. So there you go on that. Let's go to the next slide. Share of renter households behind on rent by income level, you could say. So if you're under $25,000 in annual salary, you are the largest, I guess you could say, segment of people who are behind on their rent. So that's just a quick survey that they did. Serious mortgage delinquencies rate by loan type. The charts from Q1 2005 to Q3 2020. So we can take a look at the all loans are the light green, the FHA loans are dark green, and I can tell you right now, they didn't really capture recent FHA stuff because the slide I showed you before, 17%, November, and they're only showing 10.8%. Actually, no, sorry, incorrect. That's serious mortgage delinquency rate. So that's the serious side, not the overall side. So I do stand corrected there. So that's significant. So, but we do know that that serious number has crept up the past few months as well too. So they're probably off on that. But anyway, the point is that you can see that everything spiked up over a short period of time. Right? Again, seasonally, not seasonally adjusted serious mortgage delinquencies include loans 90 plus days delinquent and loans in foreclosure. So there you go. Now, the issue what we have here with homeowners, and let me pull this up because I really can't see that. I'll get into this right now. Some of the information we have here, again, 11 million renters and households. Basically, governments have put in stuff in place to help. So far, these measures will begin to expire. Many households will face difficulties navigating significant payment arrearages or permanent income losses, which is a given. But the point I'm trying to make here is that these guys are talking about it now. So it's almost like every month that goes by, some group, some organization, some data provider, somebody's going, okay, yeah, we have all this great increase in property values, but the underlying, we don't talk about it, issues are, forbearance, foreclosures, delinquencies, mom, pa, renter, stuff like that. So it's one of those things that, the narrative is pretty much, let's not really get into this and things will be okay. But it is changing, folks. It is changing. That narrative is changing, and people need to sort of be aware of stuff, which is interesting here. So ultimately, they're saying, as of January 2021, there were 2.7 million borrowers in active forbearance. Of these borrowers, more than 900,000 will have been in forbearance for over a year as of April 2021, and more than 3 months, and have more than 3 months of missed payments. So ultimately, that's your seriously delinquent. And the whole point, though, is that, as I always make, is the more serious you are, the longer you're in forbearance, the less chance you have of recovery, which means, as they're saying here, it points to you actually have much more serious problems with what's going on with these homeowners. And, the whole thing of forbearance boils down to, once the forbearance period ends, you need to be making your monthly mortgage payments to get the benefits of the CARES Act and how they're going to maneuver and manage the payments that you've missed. If you can't do that, then you fall into the loss mitigation category, and they're going to try to work with you. And if you can't work through that, then you're going in the foreclosure bucket. It's straightforward. Here's an interesting thing, though. It says most borrowers that have exited forbearance so far have been able to resume payments without any issue. 28% remain current during forbearance, making the regular payments. 26% took a payment deferral or partial claim, placing the deferred amount at the end of the home, and 16% were able to repay the deferred amount of one lump sum directly after the end of forbearance. which is a good thing. So people did exit forbearance. It was effective, and they kind of got back on track. However, many of those exits occurred after 6 or fewer months of forbearance. So, in other words, they had a short-term blip and they got things fixed. So they were able to fix their economic issues, number one, and two, they didn't get too far behind in the arrearage to cause them more financial stress. Borrowers who have been in forbearance longer are more likely to be experiencing severe hardship, and they are more likely to have trouble resuming payments. It will be critical to monitor these borrowers in the coming months, which I do agree here. So ultimately, what they're saying here is that you got these, these two, whatever they're saying, these 2.1 million seriously delinquent, 3 months and above people in forbearance or borrowers, 2.1 million borrowers that are more than 90 days delinquent on their mortgage may have a heightened risk of foreclosure initiation, which is the case here. So that's that's something that we're not debating that. We're just talking about it. They also go back to this number of 263,000 people who are more than 90 days but are not in any sort of forbearance plan, which is interesting because I've also read from Black Knight numbers as well too that they say there's about 1.1 to 1.2 million people who are delinquent and not on any forbearance plan as well. And maybe they're just referring to in the CFPB, the FHA, CARES Act forbearance things. Some of the other information for that 1.2 million was they could be across all loan products. But these are people that could potentially jump into a forbearance plan but have not initiated that right now. If these borrowers do not reach an agreement with their servicers or our workout plan before the moratoria expire, these borrowers have limited options to avoid foreclosure initiation when the moratoria will end. So please keep that in mind. All right. So we can see that the mortgage loans 90 days delinquent or in foreclosure by forbearance status entering January 2021. Certainly on the left is that bar there is much bigger than it was pre-COVID, and that's what they're saying. So yes, we know everything is increased dramatically from what's going on. From the renter perspective, it basically is showing the fact that 8.8 million is going up. Cumulative number of filings for evictions. You can see that number getting bigger and bigger with respect to 2020. Hang on a sec here. Let me get this here. Because you can't file. So really, what you've got is people who aren't filing evictions. So it's less than the 2020 is the green line. So cumulative eviction filings across select cities and states in 2020 versus historical average. So really, you can take a look at how things have been playing out, and the historical average. It's well below the historical average because if you can't evict and that there's various moratoria going on, why are you going to spend the money to file it? That's sort of thought process here. So right away we know that there's a lot more that could be filed and will be filed when things do open up from that perspective. So there's just more chaos to come down the way here. They talk about manufactured housing, and my assumption is this is manufactured mobile homes. And I've not really found the definition of that, but I'm assuming just because of what they're talking about and how the demographic works here. It says there are 22 million Americans living in manufactured homes, and they face a greater housing risk security than those living in other forms during the COVID pandemic. As of December 2020, 28% of residents of manufactured homes reported being behind on their housing payments compared to just 12% of single-family home residents and 18% of residents in small to mid-size multi-unit buildings. So we can see how that kind of works out. And the manufactured is, when you take a look at renters, homeowners, and all households, the manufactured is the darker green bar part of that bar graph there. Ultimately, in the end, both homeowners and renters living in manufactured homes are generally more economically vulnerable. They have lower incomes and are more likely to work in occupations affected by the pandemic. Now, I live in Florida, and I can tell you that we take manufactured and mobile homes. Yes, there's a significant amount of people who do live in mobiles and manufacturers. Not everybody who lives in a mobile home is retired or is a snowbird. All right, the manufactured mobile home market segment does, again, it caters to the lower income segment. And there's mobile home parks, there's mobile homes on lots, there's mobile homes on all over the place down here. And yes, having experience with a lot of that over the past few years, seeing how that works. A lot of these people are paying week to week, or they're transient, or they're really living less than paycheck to paycheck, or on some form of social assistance. So it's a tougher market for these people, and I can see that having some issues. Again, for the mobile home parks or owners or whatever. So there you go. Interesting enough, though, is that what they're saying here is the call for further research. So they're calling this the uncounted. So ultimately, in the end, this report provides some of the basic metrics policymakers should be aware of. Data on renters and evictions remains limited. There exists no data source that provides timely nationwide data on evictions, without which it is difficult to understand the true extent of the eviction crisis. And yeah, that it is difficult. Also, too, the courts. If you take a look at evictions, those are granted in their judgments, and those are actually filed with the clerk of the court. So there's court records there. So it just depends on. I know that the courts aren't fully staffed. A lot of them are doing remote access. So some locations don't have updates going on as quickly as we'd like. So I can see that being difficult. If you look at this a bit more here, basically consumers who were economically vulnerable before the pandemic face even higher risks of housing security, and as they lack access to many of the basic consumer protections. But this is really these last two paragraphs I think are really important, and I think sort of hit the nail on the head here. It says households that appear to be thriving in the data may be struggling in real life. So you're right. You could have you could be accounted in certain statistical arenas, but for whatever reason, it's not really painting the true picture of your situation. Many households rely on untraditional forms of financing to prevent falling behind on their housing payments, whether that be credit cards, emergency savings, or family and friends. Additionally, their distress may be masked by temporary government assistance, such as stimulus payments, which is true. These consumers need assistance too, even if they are not counted in the data above. Future research could provide insight into long-term debt and credit concerns arising from the pandemic. So the last paragraph says, finally, one strength of the current housing market is that, on average, homeowners have considerable equity, and home prices in most parts of the country are still rising. That is true. However, but this to me, again, hitting it right in the head again, but long forbearance can erode equity, and foreclosures can negatively impact neighborhood housing value. So you're right. So if you're in zip codes or locations that people are they're taking a lot of forbearance, well, those will manifest into foreclosures and foreclosure filings, which will add to the level of distress, which will add to dropping values, which will then affect those who have eaten up a lot of their equity with their forbearance, and if they can't get out of it and then they need to do discount sales, well, then guess what? They're not going to have all this equity that they can play with to sell and walk away. So it's almost like it's a catch-22 sort of vicious circle here. And I can tell you, if you don't have the cash flow, then and you're eating away at your equity, when somebody comes to buy your home, you're going to have some limitations. So if there are repairs or updates or cosmetic changes that have to be made to get to this fair market value number, well, if they can't afford it, then guess what? They're not getting their fair market value. They're going to sell the discount, which further compresses their position and compromises what they can do. So got to keep this in mind. So an area that will require continued attention in this crisis is the impact of forbearance and foreclosure on home values in neighborhoods, as well as more granular information about the distribution of equity among homeowners and communities. So there you go. So the reason why I want to talk about this today is the fact that, guess what? As I mentioned, they talked about it. So as I said, the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, coming a little bit late to the party to regurgitate some possibly older data. I get it. They're doing the best they can. However, I didn't think it was that worth talking about until I saw some of their commentary. So yet another group who's saying, hey, behind the scenes, things aren't as they seem, and ultimately we're going to have more problems than the mainstream media and the current housing narrative is letting on right now. So I think, that's my position on this. I'm assuming a lot of you, put it this way, a lot of people that I talk to directly are in agreement with this situation. It's worse than it's being portrayed, and there will be some carnage as time goes on, and thus creating some opportunity as well, helping people out and creating some opportunity. So that's sort of what I wanted to get to today. So when will this ride end? This market can't be sustained. Everyone's talking about that now. And more of these sort of commentaries and reports and analysis and I guess you say just people chiming in saying that, yeah, this can't go on and we're going to have problems as things unravel here. So going back to, Black Knight saying, hey, 3.3 million percent 3.3 million delinquent loans are in the foreclosure process. All right, so that number is kind of what they're working on. I know it's more than that personally. This is not an accurate number. We get conflicting statistics. The actual number is much larger. And remember, it's an extrapolation based on sampling. So that's where it's not a called bona fide statistical peg count number. It's sampling and doing some analysis. So I always find when that happens, it's always never what it really is. And also, I think from what and this is not a knock on the company because I don't know anybody there personally, but when I see, CoreLogic numbers and Atom Data Solution numbers and Black Knight numbers, I always think that Black Knight numbers tend to be lower and more conservative on a lot of the things they talk about compared to the other two or three other people who provide data and talk about it and publish it. So that's why I believe, we're using this Black Knight mortgage, McDash board, whatever they call it, to sort of figure this stuff out, and I really believe it's underreported, and we'll be shocked in the end. All right, so realize that even people nowadays, short sales and pre-foreclosure sales are poised to become a dominant share of the distressed market in 2021 and beyond. Well, we're in 2021 and beyond now, and we're seeing stuff pick up, so that's interesting to note. 1% of all the on-market property sales fall into the distressed property category. So distressed property is either financially distressed, like the situation people find themselves in right now, or physically distressed, i.e. can't sell the home without making repairs, doing things to it, don't have the money for that, I got to sell at a discount. So this 1%, which is really, I'll show you in a second, it's the National Association of Realtors statistic, REOs, which are bank-owned sales and short sales. So that's the 1% of the overall existing home sales on a monthly basis. No one is doing short sales. How do we know this? Let's go back to the 1% rule. I'll show you, and this is the graph right now. So this is January 2021. This is the most recent information put out on existing home sales a couple weeks ago by the National Association of Realtors, so NAR. Take a look at that, where that red arrow is, that they do a little, of all the percentage of sales across the board, they say, well, what's distressed sales? Well, distressed sales last year made up 2% of the overall existing home sales for the month. This year only made up 1%. So if you want to say, hey, let's divide it in half, 0.5% of those, like half of the 1% is REO bank owned and half is short sale. So we're talking, 0.5%, 0.5% of the distress sales, or 0.5% of the overall existing home sales are short sales, which basically amounts to nothing. Yet we know we've got lots of potential here. Why? Because foreclosure filings are quietly increasing. Certain states have already opened up. More properties are being scheduled to foreclosure auction. I see that all the time now. Going back to the 1% rule, we're going to see that number increase as time goes on. And just for those who want to know, so inquiring minds, I'm going to show you something. I always say ride the wave, select a local market, get control of a distressed property. You can earn money or get into a cheaper property if you want it for your primary. But this is interesting here. By the way, Zombie Foreclosure Flip, this is my new sort of entry-level program. Talks about distressed properties. It kind of replaces the Never Pay Retail, and I'm rolling that out right now. So you want information on this and get in while the price is good, give me a shout. All right, guys, this is about that $90K in equity I'm talking about here, and I think I might have jumped the slide, so hang on. All right, this just happens to be my market here, and this is information produced by the local Realtor Association, which clearly I have access to. And this is the Tampa MSA, though. So it's the metro service area, which really takes a look at the greater Tampa Bay area, includes Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando County. So you kind of got, Clearwater, St. Pete's, Tampa, Valrico, Newport Richey area, Brooksville, things like that. So Wesley Chapel. So it's kind of that's our MSA. Well, if you take a look at where the arrow is, look at the months of supply. All right. So for January 2021, this year, we have less than 1 month's of supply of available inventory. And this chart is just talking about single family homes. I'm not getting into townhomes, condos, villas, manufactured homes, mobile homes, other type of properties. This is just single family homes, less than 1 month of supply. A healthy market is about 6 months worth of supply. And what this means is that if no other homes came on the market, all the homes would be sold in less than a month. That's how that how that number is calculated or explained to everyone here. So again, less than 1 month's supply. Now, if we take a look at the greater area here, the Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater MSA, we can take a look at, there's 3 buckets here: traditional, foreclosure, REO, and short sales. Well, in January of this year, we had about 3,300 and change closed transactions for single family homes. The median sales price was $285,000. Well, from the foreclosure REO perspective, and these are foreclosed homes sold as a bank owned on the MLS. These aren't auctions; these are foreclosed homes. Okay, already foreclosed, sold by the banks, and they're out of their inventory. 31 homes sold with a median sales price of $180,000. That's $100,000 of equity right there, guys. Short sales, the closed sales for January 2021 were even less at 21 short sales at $194,500. So the difference, in a short sale compared to a traditional home for the Greater Tampa MSA was about $90K in equity, roughly a 32% discount over retail. So when people ask the questions like, what's in it for me, or should I do this? Well, I'm giving you examples. And, listen, I don't have statistics for the rest of the country because I don't have this type of access, because I'm not a broker in California. I'm not a broker in Utah or Illinois or whatever. So you might want to do some research, and you may find this at your local real estate association. And the local real estate associations will share this information because you're a consumer, and they want consumers to be educated to use their members, right? Of course. But the point is that these are the type of numbers that are available. So again, I'm looking at short sales at a 32% discount over retail, $90K in equity. To me, that's a great opportunity. And I know that these are retail short sales. So I can guarantee you that out of these 21 short sales, there probably wasn't very many real estate agents that were working on managing this, that were really pushing the numbers down for their clients. They're more like, hey, I got a listing, we got a contract, let's see what the lender says, let's get it closed. So you see, and I'll talk about that in future videos, but the difference is that, from what I do and what my system does and how I work with buyers and such, whatever, we drive for the lowest price possible because it gives us the most options possible. And really, the homeowner doesn't care because they've got protection now from what was the Mortgage Debt Relief Act, which is called the Qualified Principal Residential Indebtedness Act, so to speak. It's Mortgage Debt Relief Act 2.0 is what that boils down to. So the point is that it's a moot point for the homeowner what you buy it for, whether it's more discount or less discount. The whole point is, you as a primary home buyer, secondary home buyer, investment opportunist, this is what you want to look at. Obviously, I can show you the way. So just want to show that here. And clearly these numbers change with every month, but my point is that the median price is going up every month. And yeah, the sampling, listen, 21 short sales out of 4 counties, 31 REO sales out of is not very much, but it goes back to the 1% rule and shows you the huge amount of opportunity we have in this area. So you might want to drop me a line if that's interesting to you. So by the way, as I mentioned before, I need financial partners for these fix and flip projects in Florida, because what I want to do is get them, fix them, and sell them retail and look at the equity that's there. So again, great returns. Great return on investment. Your investment is secured by the property. You're going to hold it, among other things. If you want more information on this or how we can work together, drop me a line, please. That's what you need to do. Reminder, gethousingdata.com. Check out the foreclosures in your area. All right, guys, connect with me. I'll tell you about what's going on here. Randy at luxuryshortsales.com. So once again, thanks for the views, likes, comments. Please share the video with your family and friends. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. I look forward to speaking with you in a couple of days.